Treasure Island. Chapter 1. Before you read, look at the pictures. What do you think the story is about? Jim Hawkins. I'll start by writing about the time when my father owned an inn called the Admiral Benbow, many years ago. I remember the day when a man walked into the inn. He was tall and strong, with an old blue coat and a scar on his face. He looked around him. "This is a nice, quiet place. I'll stay here. Please, take this up to my room," he said, pointing to a large wooden box. "You can call me Captain. And this is for you," he continued, handing my father 3 or 4 gold coins. The captain was usually a quiet man. He spent his days walking on the beach or on the cliffs. When he came back, he always asked, "Did any sailors visit the inn today?" At first, we thought he wanted to find some other sailors, but later we realized that he didn't want any sailors to find him. In the evenings, the captain sometimes told stories about his time at sea. My father was worried that nobody would want to visit the inn because they would be frightened by the captain's stories, but I think people liked them. The captain stayed at the inn for months. He did not give us any more money for his room and my father did not dare to ask him for more. One morning, the captain went for a walk along the beach. I was helping my mother to make breakfast when another man walked into the inn. He was thin and pale, with 3 fingers on his left hand. He sat down and asked, "Is this table here for my friend Bill?" I told him that I did not know Bill and said that the table was for the captain. "Well, my friend Bill might say that he's the captain," he said. "He has a scar on his face and likes to tell a story. Is that him?" "Yes," I said. "He's gone for a walk." "Which way did he walk?" he asked. I pointed towards the beach. The man stood up and waited by the door for the captain to return. When the captain saw the man, he looked pale and ill. "Black dog," the captain said. "That's right," he replied. "I've found my friend Bill. We've had a lot of adventures since I lost these fingers." I left them to talk. Then suddenly there were loud shouts and both men stood up and ran outside. The captain had a sword and then I saw Black Dog running away with blood on his arm. The man continued running until we could not see him. The captain walked back into the inn. He looked ill and suddenly he fell over. I thought perhaps he was hurt from the fight. At that moment, the doctor arrived to see my father who was sick. "Help us, Dr. Livesey. The captain is hurt," said my mother. The doctor looked at him and said, "He is not hurt, but he is very ill. Help me to take him upstairs." We took the captain up to his bedroom and the doctor gave him some medicine. The captain stayed in bed, but he was not quiet. He told me about his travels at sea, and said that he had something which people wanted. "Black Dog is not as bad as some of the other men," he said, "they all want to find me. Tell me if you see them." That evening, my father died. I felt terrible and forgot all about the strange things that the captain told me. Then, a week later, I saw a blind man coming down the road towards the inn. He stopped outside the door when he was near and asked, "Where am I? Will a kind person help me?" "You are at the Admiral Benbow Inn in Black Hill Cove," I told him. At that moment, he grabbed my hand. "Take me to the captain," he said. "Take me to him now." I walked with the blind man into the inn and took him to the captain. The captain looked very surprised to see him. "Now, Bill, stay where you are. I can hear you. Take this." He then put something in the captain's hand, turned round and left. The captain looked at what the man gave him. 10 o'clock. He said. "I have time." Then the captain suddenly fell to the floor. He was dead. I found my mother and we talked about what we should do. We knew that the captain had a box in his room and it probably had money in it. The blind man and Black Dog probably wanted this. I thought about taking the box to Dr. Livesey, but I did not want to leave my mother. We knew that we were in a danger. We decided to go to the nearest village and ask our neighbors for help guarding the inn. However, none of the people in the village wanted to help us. They did not come back with us, but one man went to tell Dr. Livesey. Another man said that we could have his gun. It was dark when we returned to the inn. We found the key to the box in the captain's jacket. I also saw the message that the blind man gave to the captain. It said, "You have until 10 o'clock tonight." We went upstairs and my mother soon opened the box with the key. Inside, we found some clothes, some guns, some papers and other things. We also found a bag with some coins inside. "We only have time until 10 o'clock, I said. "Let's leave before the blind man and black dog return." "I'll only take the money which the captain owes us," my mother said, opening the bag. We stood up to leave, and I decided to take the papers from the box, too. We walked as quickly as we could back towards the village, but as we walked, we heard the sound of people in the road behind us. "Take the money and run," said my mother. "I'm too weak to continue." I did not want to leave her, so we stopped under a bridge where we could hide in the dark. Chapter 2. Before you read. What do you think will happen next in the story? I could see the road from where we were hiding, and soon I saw 8 men. One of them was the blind man. I saw them walk down the road to the Admiral Benbow Inn. They were surprised to see that the door was open, then they all ran inside. I heard someone shout, "Bill's dead." "Go and find his box," said the blind man. A little later, a window opened from the captain's bedroom and a man called out, "Someone has opened the box." "Is it there?" said the blind man. "Only the money is there," replied the man. "It's the boy and the woman from the inn," shouted the blind man. "Let's find them." The men started to look around the house. "If you find it you'll all be rich," said the blind man. At this time, we heard horses coming down the road. When the men heard the horses, they started to run in all directions. The horses arrived, so I ran out to see who was riding them. One of them was the boy who went to get Dr. Livesey, and the rest were policemen. 2 men took my mother to the village, where she soon felt better, and the others tried to catch the men. But it was too late, we heard that they escaped on a boat. I returned to the Admiral Benbow with the police. "What did they want?" said Mr. Dance, the head of the police. "I think that they wanted this," I said, showing him the papers that I still had in my jacket. "I'd like to take them to Dr. Livesey." "That's a good idea," said Mr. Dance. "He's a magistrate as well as a doctor. He'll know what to do. I'll come with you." We found that Dr. Livesey was not at home, but was eating at the house of Mr. Trelawney, an important rich man. Mr. Trelawney asked us into his house. I showed Mr. Trelawney and Dr. Livesey the papers that the captain had in his box. "I think this might be a clue as to where Flint buried his treasure," said Dr. Livesey. "That is why those men were not interested in money," agreed Mr. Trelawney. "If you are right, we should take the next boat from Bristol and go and find the treasure ourselves." "If Jim here agrees," said the doctor, looking at me, "we should look at these papers now." The doctor looked at the papers. Some of them seemed to describe the ships that the captain and his men had robbed of money. Then we looked at the other papers and saw a map of an island, with a big cross on it next to the words, "Most of treasure here." "Dr. Livesey, we should go to Bristol tomorrow," said Mr. Trelawney. "In a few days, we'll find the best ship in England. Jim Hawkins here can come as our ship's boy. You can be the ship's doctor." "I agree," said the doctor, "but those men who tried to find the map will now be looking for us. We are not safe anymore. We must not tell anyone else what we know." It took us longer than we thought to be ready to leave England. While Mr. Trelawney prepared for the journey in Bristol, I stayed at Mr. Trelawney's house with his servant Redruth and spent hours studying the map, thinking about the treasure that we might find. One day, a letter was sent to me from Mr. Trelawney. It said that a good man called Blandley had a ship called the Hispaniola for us. Trelawney said that he had found a crew ready to work on it. The crew included a man called Long John Silver, who had lost a leg but was a good cook. Silver also knew other men who would join us. Trelawney said that everyone was excited by the thought of the treasure. I was surprised by this, as I thought we had to keep the news of the treasure a secret. I was very excited by the thought of a journey and I went to say goodbye to my mother at the Admiral Benbow. I was very sad to leave her the next day, when I traveled to Bristol with Redruth. We had just one night in the city before we were going to sail. Treasure Island. Chapter 3. Before you read. What do you think life is like on the Hispaniola? The next morning, Mr. Trelawney asked me to take a note to Long John Silver. I went to the inn which Silver owned. It was full of people, but I soon saw a tall, strong man with one leg. He looked very happy and seemed to know all of the people there. I walked up to him and gave him the note. When he saw that it was from Mr. Trelawney, he looked surprised and said, "Ah, you must be the new ship's boy." At that moment, one of the men in the inn quickly left the room. I saw that he had 3 fingers on one hand. "It's Black Dog," I called. "Stop him." "Yes, stop him. He did not pay for his food," called Silver to one of his helpers. The helper ran after the door. "Do you know that man? Black Dog, is it?" Silver asked me. "Yes, he was one of the men who attacked my home." "Did Mr. Trelawney tell you about that?" I replied. "Ah, yes. I've seen him in my inn before. He sometimes comes with a blind man." "The blind man is called Pew," I said. "He was with Black Dog when they attacked." "Then we must catch them both," said Silver. However, the helper returned and said he could not catch Black Dog. "Well, we must return to Mr. Trelawney," said Silver. We walked back along the harbor past boats of different sizes, all preparing to go to sea. Silver told me all about the boats and I knew that he was a great sailor. We found Dr. Livesey with Mr. Trelawney when we returned to his hotel, and told them about Black Dog. "There is nothing we can do now," said Mr. Trelawney. "We leave at 4 o'clock this afternoon. Get your hat, Jim, we'll go on the ship now," he said to me. It took some time to reach the Hispaniola. When we walked onto the big ship, the captain, Smollett, did not look happy to see us. "What's the problem?" asked Mr. Trelawney. "I don't like the men on this ship and I'm not happy about where we're going," he said. "Why not?" asked Dr. Livesey. "I was told that the destination of the journey was a secret," he explained. "But the crew tell me we're looking for treasure. I know that looking for treasure always means danger. And when I go on a journey, I like to be able to choose my own crew." "Don't you like the crew we chose?" asked Mr. Trelawney. "If I sail with them, I want you to stay at the front of the ship for all the journey, and to keep guns with you. And don't show anyone the map," said Smollett. "Are you worried there will be a mutiny?" asked Dr. Livesey. "It's my job to keep you safe, that's all," said Smollett, and walked to another part of the ship. "I think you've 2 good men on the ship," said Dr. Livesey. "That's Long John Silver and Captain Smollett." "I know Long John Silver is a good man," said Mr. Trelawney, "but I don't think Captain Smollett is." I agreed with Mr. Trelawney. I did not like Captain Smollett. The Hispaniola finally left Bristol and our long journey began. Silver was able to walk around the ship on one leg, using only a crutch. All the men liked him and he was a good cook, His kitchen always clean. When he wasn't working, he looked after his parrot. He called it Captain Flint and said it was 200 years old. The parrot could talk, too, which always made me laugh. One night, before I went to bed, I decided to eat an apple. The apples were kept in a big barrel which I climbed inside, because it was nearly empty. Before I left the barrel, I heard a man talking nearby. It was Silver and what he said was terrible. On that journey, Flint was the captain, he said. It was then that I lost my leg and Pew became blind. After that journey, I put a lot of money in the bank. It was a great journey, and most of the same crew are on this ship today. You won't be able to return to Bristol after this journey, said another sailor called Dick. What will happen to your inn? I've sold it, said Silver. My wife has the money and is waiting for me to return in a secret place. And after this journey, you'll have lots of money, too. Another man joined them and said, I'm tired of waiting. When can we attack Captain Smollett? You must be patient, said Silver. Trelawney has the map, so we wait until they have found the treasure. We might also want Smollett to take us home before we attack. We shouldn't wait that long, replied another sailor. You're like the others, said Silver. You want to do things quickly. That's what Pew and Flint wanted to do. What happened to them? Pew is blind and Flint is dead. I began to realize that Silver was not only a cook, but he was also a pirate, and the other crew were part of his gang. No, we wait, continued Silver. When the time is right, I'll kill Trelawney and his friends. Now, Dick, can you get me an apple? When I heard these words, I was very frightened. However, before Dick came to the barrel, I heard another sailor call out. I can see land. It was this news that saved me, because the sailors now all forgot about apples. We were near the Treasure Island. Treasure Island. Chapter 4. Before you read. In Chapter 3, Jim learns that there are pirates in the crew. What do you think he does next? I heard people running to look at the island, and I quietly climbed out of the barrel. I then walked up to join the sailors at the side of the ship. We could see 2 low hills and one big one. The island was now very close. I've been here before, said Silver. I know where the ship should stop. I have a map here, said Captain Smollett. Can you take us to that place? I saw that Silver was excited to take the map, but it was not the one with the treasure marked on it. Yes, I can see it. You must go here, he said, pointing to a place on the map. Then he turned to me and said, You'll love this island. You can swim and climb trees and walk up the hills. I smiled at Silver, but inside I was very frightened of him now. I could not trust anything that he said. I soon found Dr. Livesey and quietly said to him, I must speak to you, Captain Smollett and Mr. Trelawney. I have some terrible news. Dr. Livesey's expression did not change. He asked me to find his glasses downstairs and walked off to talk to Mr. Trelawney and Smollett. I waited downstairs and soon the 3 men joined me. What do you want to tell us? Asked Mr. Trelawney. I told them everything that I had heard in the barrel. When I finished talking, they thanked me. Captain, said Mr. Trelawney. You were right and I was wrong. What shall we do? I'm surprised too, said Captain Smollett. They have worked hard and been a better crew than I expected. Now we must continue. We can't go back, or they might attack us immediately. I don't think that they will attack us until we find the treasure. Long John Silver did not find all of this crew, so some of the men are good men. We must wait, watch and attack them when they don't expect it. Jim can help us, said Dr. Livesey. The men all trust him. He can listen and find out who we can trust. I did not like this thought. I counted the men that Silver did not find for the crew. There were 7 from a crew of 19, and I was one of them. The next morning, the Hispaniola stopped close to the island. There were many trees, and above the trees I saw the rocky tops of the hills. Silver helped Captain Smollett to sail the boat closer to the shore. It was very hot and very quiet. It smelled like bad eggs. "This place is only good for diseases," said Silver. The crew worked hard on our journey to the island, but now they did not seem to want to work. I remember Dr. Livesey talking about a mutiny. Perhaps it was near. Only Silver worked as hard as usual. Later, Captain Smollett told us that he had a plan. "Let's ask the men if they'd like to spend the afternoon on the island. If they go, we can take the ship. If they don't go, we know we need to fight them for the ship." Mr. Trelawney agreed. We decided to tell all the men we could trust about our plan and gave them all guns. Captain Smollett then told the crew that they could all have the afternoon on the island to relax, if they wanted to. "When you hear a gun at the end of the day, it'll be time to come back," he said. All the crew suddenly looked happy and they all agreed to go. Perhaps they thought that they could find the treasure immediately. Captain Smollett asked Silver to organize the men. 6 men would stay on the Hispaniola and 13 would take the small boats to the shore. I realized that there were 6 of Silver's men on the ship. The men in our group would not be able to take the ship, so I decided I would go with Silver onto the island. I got on one of the boats quietly, but Silver saw me. Had I made a big mistake? The boat I was in was fast, and we were nearly on the beach first when I held onto the branch of a tree and jumped out of the boat. I heard someone calling me, but I did not listen and began to run as fast as I could. When I stopped, I felt happy. Silver did not know where I was. This part of the island was open, with just a few trees. I could see the hills in front of me. As I walked, I saw pretty flowers, snakes and small birds. Suddenly a cloud of birds flew into the sky and knew that something was coming towards me. I was correct, because I then heard people talking. I decided to hide behind some trees. I realized that one of the people was Silver, but I could not hear what he was saying. Soon the birds returned, and I knew that the men had gone. I told myself that it was my job to find out what these men were planning to do. So I decided to follow them, without them seeing me. After a few minutes, I saw Silver and another sailor talking near a beach. "I want you to join us, Tom, because I know you're a good sailor. I'm telling you this to save you," said Silver. "Silver," Tom replied, "you're a good man and you shouldn't work with these pirates. I'd prefer to lose my hand than work with them." I knew then that here was a man that we could trust. Then came news of another. I suddenly heard a terrible shout, then all was quiet. "What was that?" asked Tom. Silver smiled and said that? "Oh, I think that was Alan." "Alan!" cried Tom. "He's a good man. If your men have hurt him, then you are no friend of mine. I won't help you." Tom began to walk away from Silver along the beach. Silver suddenly threw his crutch at Tom, and it hit him hard on the back. He fell to the ground, and before he could stand again, Silver killed him with a knife. Silver now blew a whistle and I knew that more of his men would soon arrive on the beach. I was very frightened. I walked quietly back into the trees, then ran as quickly as I could. As I ran, I began to think. What could I do now? When we heard Captain Smollett's gun, could I go back to the beach to be with these men? If I did, I knew that they would kill me. I would have to stay on the island forever. Before you read. What do you think Jim should do next? I finally stopped running and saw that I was close to the bottom of one of the small hills. The air was fresher here and the trees were taller. Suddenly, from up the hill, something jumped behind a tree. I do not know if it was a man or an animal, but it looked big and dangerous. I decided to walk back towards the beach, but then I saw him again. I realized it was a man, but he was running very fast from tree to tree. I remembered that I had a gun and this made me feel safer. I decided to walk towards the man. When he saw me walking towards him, to my surprise, he came out from behind the tree and knelt down in front of me. "Who are you?" I asked. "Bin Gun," he said in a dry voice. "I've not spoken to anyone for 3 years." The man had very long hair and skin that was burned by the sun. His clothes were dirty and made of old sails. "What happened to you?" I asked. "I was left here by a ship," he said. "I've lived on fish and fruit ever since. I dream of eating good food again. If I can get back to my ship, I'll give you bread and cheese," I said. He began to look worried. "If you can get back to your ship? Why? What's to stop you?" he said. "It isn't a problem with you," I replied. "I'm a good man," he told me. "I'm very rich, too," he said in a quiet voice. I began to think that perhaps Bin Gun was crazy. Bin Gun saw that I did not believe him. "I am rich. And you can be rich too, because you found me," he said. Then he looked worried and said, "You didn't come on Flint's ship, did you?" I realized now that this man could help me. "No, Flint's dead, but some of Flint's crew is on the ship. That is not good for any of us," I told him. "Is there a man with one leg?" he asked. "Yes, Silver. He's the cook and their leader," I explained. "If you work for Silver, I'm finished," he said. I decided to tell him my story from the start, and he looked very interested. "You're a good boy," he said at the end. "Don't worry, you can trust me. Do you think that Trelawney would give me money and allow me to come home on the ship if I helped him?" he asked. "Of course," I replied. "And he'll need your help on the ship home, I'm sure." "You're right," he said. "You know, I was on Flint's ship when he hid the treasure here. He was with 6 men and they were on the island for about a week. We waited for them on a ship called the Walrus. One day, Flint returned to the ship on his own. The other 6 men were dead. We don't know how he did it. Billy Bones and Long John Silver were with me on the ship. They asked Flint where the treasure was. 'You can go on the island and look for it,' he said. 'But you'll be there on your own. I'm taking this ship home.' 3 years ago, I was on a different ship. When we saw the island, I told our crew that Flint's treasure was on it. We spent 12 days looking for it. They were not happy when we found nothing. One day, they went back to the ship and told me I could stay. Here's a gun and a spade. You can look for the treasure on your own," they said. "So, you tell Trelawney, I would prefer to work for a man I can trust like him, than with a group of pirates." "I'll tell him, but how can I return to my ship from here?" I asked him. "I have a boat. I made it myself. We could go to the ship when it's dark." Suddenly, we heard the sound of a gun. "They have started to fight," I said. "We must be quick." I began to run back with Ben. He gave me directions, and ran easily
Chapter
next to me.
6.
We heard
Before
more
you
guns.
read,
Then I saw
what
a
do you
flag
think
flying
is
above
happening
some
on the
trees
ship?
while Jim, Silver and the other men are on the island. Dr. Livesey. When the boats went to the shore, I talked to Captain Smollett and Mr. Trelawney. There was no wind at all, so we knew we could not take the ship, even if we wanted to attack the 6 men who stayed on the ship with us. Then we heard that Jim Hawkins was on the island with Silver and his men. We were very worried about him. I decided to take a boat to the shore with another man we could trust, called Hunter. When we reached the island, we walked a little way and then we found a small fort. It was big enough for about 25 people and was very well defended. It also had water. Then I heard a shout. I thought that Jim was dead. We ran back to the boat and soon returned to the Hispaniola. I told Captain Smollett and Mr. Trelawney my plan. We quickly put food, medicines and guns in the boat. At the same time, Captain Smollett and Mr. Trelawney said to Silver's men who were still on the ship, "We have guns. If you try to contact Silver, you will be dead." They looked very surprised. I then took the boat back to the beach with Hunter and another sailor called Joyce. We quickly took everything up to the fort, then I left Hunter and Joyce in the fort and returned to the Hispaniola. We knew that Silver had more men than us, but we also knew that none of them had guns. We thought that this gave us an advantage. On the Hispaniola, Trelawney helped me to put food and more weapons into the boat. Then we called for Captain Smollett, Redruth and a good sailor called Abraham Gray, and they climbed into the boat with us. Our journey back to the island was more difficult than the others. There were more people and supplies now, so the boat was heavy and very close to the water. We had to be very careful to prevent the boat from sinking. The wind blew from a different direction, too, and we were not moving towards the beach near the fort. "We'll never get to the beach," I said. "We must keep in this direction," said Captain Smollett. "Work hard, be patient, and we will arrive." Then his voice changed. "The cannon!" he called. I looked round and realized that the men we left on the Hispaniola were preparing a cannon. We were moving so slowly that we were not far from the ship. It would be easy for them to hit us. Trelawney stood up with a gun and fired at the pirates, and one of them fell. We heard a cry from the ship, and another from the beach. We saw that the other pirates were getting into their boats. "Go as fast as you can," said Captain Smollett. "If we don't get to the beach, we're finished." "They are only using one boat," I said. "The other men are walking to the beach to wait for us." "It's a long way for them to run," said Captain Smollett. "It's a race to get there first." We moved fast, and the wind was not so strong near the beach. However, Trelawney fired his gun again, which made us all move to one side of the boat. It started to sink, but we were in just 3 feet of water. It was not difficult to walk to the beach, but we had lost many of our supplies in the water, including some of our guns. There were now voices in the trees and we knew that the pirates were near. We had to get to the fort before the pirates got to the beach. We all ran as fast as possible and at last we saw the fort in front of us. At the same time, 7 pirates arrived at the other side of it. The pirates looked surprised to see the fort and stopped. This gave us time to fire our guns, and they quickly turned and ran into the trees behind them. Before we could enter the fort, we heard another gun fire, and poor Redruth fell down. We quickly picked him up and took him into the fort, but it was too late, he was dead. Trelawney was very sad. Redruth had been a good servant to him. Captain Smollett put up a flag inside the fort and counted the supplies, then he asked me, "How long will we have to spend on this island?" In England, I told blandly that if we were not back by August, to come and find us, I explained. "We need the supplies that were lost in the sea," said Captain Smollett. "Without them, we have enough supplies until July only." At that moment, we heard gunfire and the fort was nearly hit. "They can see the flag," said Trelawney. "We should take it down." "No," said Captain Smollett. "We keep the flag. It will show the pirates that we are not frightened of them." The gunfire continued, but it was almost impossible for them to hit anyone inside the fort. Just then, we heard someone calling. "Doctor! Mr. Trelawney! Captain! Are you there?" I ran to the door of the fort and I found Jim Hawkins, safe and alive.